My name is Evelyn, and I was standing in my apartment kitchen when the letter arrived. It wasn't even sealed in an envelope, just a folded piece of cream-colored cardstock with my mother's perfect calligraphy on the front. Inside, 12 words that would change everything. Don't try coming to the family reunion this year. It's better this way. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone, typed one word, understood, and hit send. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt nothing but a cold, crystalline clarity settling over me like the first snow of winter. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was free. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Let me back up. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a house that looked like something from a design magazine. White columns, manicured hedges, a circular driveway where my father's Mercedes and my mother's Range Rover sat like twin symbols of success. The Ashford family. That's us. My father, Richard Ashford III, managing partner at a prestigious law firm. My mother, Victoria, on the board of half the charities in Fairfield County. My older brother, Marcus, the golden child who'd graduated Harvard Law and married a senator's daughter. Then there was me. I was the artistic one, the sensitive one, the one who chose teaching over law school, who married a high school English teacher instead of a corporate attorney, who lived in a modest 2-bedroom in Stamford instead of buying a colonial in the right neighborhood. For years, I convinced myself they accepted my choices, that their tight smiles and subtle digs were just their way of showing concern. I was wrong. The fracture started 18 months ago at Marcus's 40th birthday party. It was held at the country club, naturally, with 200 guests and an open bar that probably cost more than my annual salary. I arrived with my husband, David, both of us dressed in our best, which, I'll admit, wasn't quite up to the Ashford standard. My dress was from Nordstrom Rack. David's suit was 3 years old. We were standing by the hors d'oeuvres table when I overheard them. My mother's voice, crystal clear despite the ambient noise. I just don't understand why Evelyn insists on living like a graduate student. She's 36 years old. Marcus's wife, Brittany. It's embarrassing. Did you see what she wore to the Hendersons gala? I thought she was wait staff. Laughter. Multiple voices joining in. Then my father. The girl has always been determined to disappoint us. At least Marcus turned out right. I felt David's hand on my back, steadying me. Let's get some air, he whispered. But I couldn't move. I stood there, frozen, listening to my family dissect my life like a failed experiment, while string quartet music played and champagne flowed. We left early. I cried the entire drive home. David held me that night and said all the right things. That they were wrong, that I was living an authentic life, that teaching literature to high school students and spending weekends at museums and actually being happy mattered more than country club memberships. I believed him, or I tried to. 3 months later, David died. A brain aneurysm. He was correcting papers at our kitchen table one Sunday afternoon, and he just stopped, slumped forward, gone before the ambulance arrived. The doctor said he likely felt nothing, that it was instantaneous. They said this like it was supposed to be comforting. I became a widow at 36. The funeral was small. David's parents flew in from Oregon, some colleagues from the school where we both taught, a handful of former students who remembered him fondly. My family came, of course. They sat in the front row, dressed appropriately, made appropriate sympathetic noises. My mother even held my hand during the service. But afterward, at the reception, I overheard my father on his phone in the hallway. Yes, I'll be back in the office tomorrow. Just a family obligation. Evelyn's husband passed. Yes, unfortunate, they were young. No children, thank God. At least she won't be trapped with that. Well, she chose to marry beneath her station. Perhaps this is an opportunity for her to recalibrate. An opportunity. My husband's death was an opportunity to recalibrate. I didn't confront him. I was too numb, too hollowed out by grief to process another betrayal. I went through the motions, accepted casseroles from neighbors, returned to work after 2 weeks because staying home alone in our apartment was unbearable. Started seeing a therapist who specialized in grief counseling. The months blurred together. Summer became fall, became winter. My family checked in occasionally, perfunctory texts asking if I was holding up. I always said yes. Then came the inheritance dispute. David's parents, Tom and Linda Miller, were simple people. Tom had worked as a postal carrier for 35 years. Linda was a retired elementary school librarian. They'd saved carefully, lived modestly, and when Tom's brother passed away childless, he left them his property, a small cabin on 10 acres in southern Oregon, near the California border. Tom and Linda were getting older. They wanted to sell the property and split the proceeds between their two children, David's younger sister Amy and David's estate, which meant me. The land was appraised at $340,000, not life-changing money for some, but significant. David's share would be $170,000. But there was a complication. A timber company had expressed interest in the property. They were offering $800,000, more than double the appraised value, because of the old-growth trees and development potential. Tom and Linda wanted to take the timber company's offer and split that instead. $400,000 for me. I said yes immediately. Of course I did. It was generous beyond measure, and it was what David would have. Wanted his parents secure, his sister taken care of, and me with a financial cushion I'd never dreamed of having. But when I mentioned it to my family at Sunday dinner, a monthly obligation I still forced myself to attend, everything changed. My father set down his wine glass with surgical precision. $400,000. Yes, I said. It's incredibly generous of them. Generous? My mother repeated. Evelyn, do you have any idea what that property could be worth if you held it? If you fought the sale? I blinked. I'm not going to fight David's parents. They're being more than fair. Marcus leaned forward. Fair isn't the point. You're entitled to David's half. You should get an independent appraisal, contest the timber company offer, maybe even pursue a partition action. A partition action? I stared at him. You want me to sue my dead husband's parents? I want you to protect your interests, Marcus said smoothly. This is basic estate law, Evelyn. You have rights. They're in their 70s. They want to retire in peace. My father's voice was ice. And you want to live in a cramped apartment on a teacher's salary for the rest of your life. Don't be naive. That's when I understood. They weren't concerned about my welfare. They were embarrassed that their daughter might come into real money and still choose to live simply. That I might have the means to join their world, but refuse to do so. I'm not suing them, I said quietly. Then you're a fool, my mother said. I left before dessert was served, but they didn't let it go. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus called me repeatedly with advice. My mother sent emails with links to real estate attorneys. My father had his paralegal draft a letter to the Millers on my behalf, without my permission, claiming I was contesting the sale. When Tom Miller called me, confused and hurt, I nearly vomited from shame. Evelyn, your father's office sent us a legal notice. They're saying you don't agree to the timber sale. Is this true? No, I said, my voice breaking. Tom, I'm so sorry. I never authorized that. I'll fix this. Because Linda and I, we thought we were doing right by you. We don't want to fight. We're too old for this. You're not going to fight, I promised. I'm taking care of it right now. I called my father's office and demanded they withdraw the letter. I called Marcus and told him to never contact the Millers again. I sent Tom and Linda a handwritten apology and hired my own attorney, not from my family's firm, to explicitly authorize the timber sale and waive any claims to additional compensation. The sale went through. I received my $400,000. I put most of it in investments and kept enough to pay off my car and create an emergency fund. And then I stopped going to Sunday dinners. At first, they didn't notice. or pretended not to. But after 6 weeks of ignored invitations, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. "This has gone on long enough, she said, standing in my doorway in her Burberry coat. "You're being childish." "I'm being childish?" Something in me snapped. "You tried to manipulate me into suing my husband's grieving parents. You sent unauthorized legal threats. You treated my widowhood like a business opportunity. We were trying to protect you." "No," I said. "You were embarrassed by me. Again. Just like you've been embarrassed by me my entire adult life because I don't live up to your standards." My mother's face went very still. "If you feel that way, perhaps it's best we have some distance." Perhaps it is. She left without another word. That was 8 months ago. In that time, I'd had minimal contact with my family, brief texts on holidays, a generic birthday card from my mother. Nothing from Marcus or my father. I told myself it was fine. I had my job, my students, my grief counseling sessions that were slowly helping me rebuild something resembling a life. Then, the letter arrived. The annual Ashford family reunion was a sacred tradition. 3 days at my parents' summer house in Martha's Vineyard every August. Extended family, old family friends, endless photos in nautical attire. I'd attended every single year for 36 years. And now I was uninvited. It's better this way. I sat down at my kitchen table and really looked at those words. Better for whom? Better because I was an embarrassment? Because I'd chosen authenticity over appearances? Because I'd refused to participate in their cruelty? Or better, because they genuinely didn't want me there? The answer didn't matter anymore. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Amy Miller, David's sister. We'd stayed close after the funeral, texting regularly, meeting for coffee when she visited the East Coast for work. "Amy," I said when she answered, "how would you feel about me visiting Oregon for a few weeks?" 3 days later, I was on a plane to Portland. Tom and Linda's house was exactly what I needed. A modest ranch-style home with a garden full of tomatoes and zinnias, where nobody cared what car I drove or what I wore. Amy took time off from her job as a veterinary technician to show me around. We hiked. We visited the coast. We sat on the back porch drinking wine and talking about David. Real conversations full of laughter and tears and memories. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Linda brought out a box of David's childhood things she'd been saving for me. "I kept meaning to send it," she said, "but I thought maybe you'd want to go through it in person." Inside were photos, report cards, a battered copy of The Lord of the Rings, and a letter. It was addressed to me in David's handwriting, with a date from 2 years before his death. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. Sorry I didn't get to grow old with you. Sorry for every plan we made that won't happen now. But I need to tell you something. While I still can, you are the best person I've ever known. Not because you're perfect. You're not, and neither am I. But because you're genuine in a world full of pretense. You chose a life that made you happy instead of a life that looked impressive. You chose love over status. You chose meaning over money. Your family never understood that. I watched them chip away at your confidence for years, and it killed me. But you never let them change who you are. Whatever happens, promise me you'll keep being exactly who you are. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're not small. You're extraordinary. I love you. I'll always love you." David, I cried so hard that Amy had to hold me while Linda rubbed my back. And when I finally stopped crying, something inside me had shifted. David was right. I wasn't small, and I was done letting my family make me feel that way. I flew back to Connecticut with a plan. The first thing I did was visit my financial advisor. I asked him about the $400,000 I'd invested. With the market's performance and my conservative strategy, it had grown to $470,000. "What would you say?" I asked. If I told you I wanted to do something meaningful with this money? His eyes lit up. I'd say, tell me more. Over the next 2 months, I worked with a team of lawyers and accountants to establish the David Miller Memorial Scholarship Fund. The fund would provide full-ride scholarships to graduating high school seniors who wanted to pursue careers in teaching or education, specifically those from low-income families who otherwise couldn't afford college. I seeded it with $300,000. With proper investment and annual fundraising, it would support at least 2 students per year in perpetuity. The scholarship would be administered through the school where David and I had taught. The first recipients would be announced in October, 1 month before the Ashford family reunion I'd been disinvited from. But I wasn't done. I reached out to the local newspaper, the Stamford Advocate, and pitched them a human interest story about the scholarship fund. They loved it. They sent a reporter and photographer to interview me at the school, surrounded by David's former students. The article ran on a Sunday, front page of the local section. Photos of me with students, quotes about David's passion for teaching, details about the scholarship fund and how it would impact local families. Widow honors late husband's legacy with major educational fund. The headline read. By Monday morning, it had been picked up by regional outlets. By Tuesday, it was trending on local social media. The school was flooded with donation inquiries. Former students started a GoFundMe to contribute to the fund in David's name. Within a week, we'd raised an additional $50,000, and my phone started ringing. The first call was from Brittany, Marcus's wife. Evelyn, I saw the article. It's really wonderful what you're doing. Thank you. I wanted to reach out because, well, I think there's been some misunderstanding about the reunion situation. Has there? A pause. Your mother was worried about you? She thought it might be too difficult, being around everyone without David. She was trying to spare you pain. I almost laughed. Is that what she told you? I just think maybe if you called her, you could clear the air. Brittany, I appreciate the call, but I'm not interested in clearing the air. I'm busy running a scholarship fund and actually making a difference in people's lives. I hung up before she could respond. The next call was from my mother herself. Evelyn, we need to talk. Do we? Don't be difficult. I saw the newspaper article. It's very noble what you're doing. Noble, I repeated. That's one word for it. People are asking us about it. They want to know why we weren't mentioned, why the family didn't contribute. And there it was. The real reason for her call. Not pride in my accomplishment, not joy at David's legacy being honored, but concern about appearances. Well, Mother, that's simple. You weren't mentioned because you didn't contribute. And you didn't contribute because you told me I was a fool for accepting the inheritance that funded this scholarship. Remember? Silence. I remember you wanted me to sue Tom and Linda Miller. I remember Dad sending unauthorized legal threats. I remember you being more concerned about my financial portfolio than my grief. Evelyn, no, you don't get to rewrite history now because I did something publicly visible. You uninvited me from the family reunion because I was an embarrassment. Well, congratulations, I'm not embarrassed anymore. I ended the call. The third contact came via Marcus. He didn't call. Instead, he showed up at the school one afternoon as I was leaving. We need to talk, he said, stepping out of his BMW. I'm busy. 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I stopped. Fine, 5 minutes. He looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for Marcus. Look, I know things have been strained, and I know Mom and Dad handled the inheritance situation badly. Badly is an understatement. I agree. He ran a hand through his hair. But this scholarship fund? Evelyn, it's making the family look bad. Like we don't support education or charitable causes. Maybe you should support education and charitable causes then. We do. We donate to plenty of organizations. For the tax breaks and the photo ops, I said. This is different. This is personal. This is real. It's also creating a PR problem. Dad's firm is getting questions. Mom's charity board is uncomfortable. And frankly, the timing feels deliberate. The timing? I stared at him. My husband died 18 months ago. I established a scholarship in his name. What part of that is about you? The part where you launched it right before our family reunion and made sure the press covered it. I smiled then. Not a nice smile. Marcus, if I wanted revenge, this wouldn't be it. This is about honoring someone who actually deserved to be honored. The fact that it makes you uncomfortable is just a bonus. So, what do you want? An apology? I want nothing from you. Not anymore. I walked to my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. The scholarship announcement ceremony was held in mid-October. We'd selected 2 inaugural recipients, Maria Ortiz, who wanted to teach elementary school, and James Chen, who wanted to become a high school history teacher. Both were first-generation college students from working-class families. The school auditorium was packed: students, teachers, parents, local officials. The mayor came and gave a speech about investment in education. A state representative talked about the importance of supporting future teachers. I was sitting in the front row when I noticed them. My parents, Marcus and Brittany, all of them dressed impeccably, sitting in the back row. They'd come. I felt a wave of anger, then something colder. They were here for optics, to be seen supporting the scholarship, to recover from the PR problem Marcus had complained about. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. And then I told the truth. My husband David believed that teaching was the most important profession in the world. Not the most prestigious, not the most lucrative, but the most important. He believed that every child deserved a teacher who saw their potential, who believed in them, who showed up every day ready to make a difference. I paused, finding Maria and James in the audience. David came from a family that valued substance over status. His parents, Tom and Linda Miller, taught him that true wealth wasn't measured in money or property, but in the lives you touched and the love you shared. When David died, they honored that lesson by making sure his legacy would continue through this scholarship. I could see my mother's face, tight and controlled. This scholarship exists because of their generosity, because they understood what David understood, that giving someone the opportunity to pursue their calling is worth more than any material inheritance. I looked directly at my family then. Some people measure worth by the size of their house, or the prestige of their firm, or their position in society. David measured it differently. He measured it by whether you lived with integrity, whether you lifted others up, whether you stayed true to yourself even when it was easier to conform. The audience was silent. Maria and James, you've been chosen for this scholarship not just because of your academic achievements, but because your essays showed us who you are. You're not pursuing teaching because it's easy or because it will make you rich. You're pursuing it because you want to make a difference. That's exactly what David would have wanted. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Maria and James came up to the stage, and we took photos with the giant. Ceremonial check. Reporters asked questions. Students crowded around to congratulate me, and my family slipped out the back. I didn't chase them. I didn't need to. 3 days later, I received an email from my mother. Not a call, an email. Evelyn, your father and I have discussed the situation, and we believe it's best if we continue to maintain our distance. Your recent actions have made it clear that you don't share our family's values or priorities. While we wish you well, we don't think ongoing contact serves anyone's interests. The reunion invitation stands as originally communicated. Mother, I read it twice. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I laughed, because they'd given me exactly what I needed. Not an apology or reconciliation, but complete, unambiguous clarity. They were choosing appearances over their own daughter, status over substance, and they were doing it in writing. I forwarded the email to my therapist with a single line. I think I'm done grieving this relationship. Her response came within an hour. I think you might be right. How do you feel? I felt free. The scholarship fund continued to grow. By December, we had enough pledge donations to expand to 4 students per year. A wealthy alum who'd had David as a teacher donated $100,000. A teachers' union contributed. Small donations came from all over the country. $20 here, $50 there, from former students and parents whose children had been taught by people like David. I started a blog about the scholarship and about David's teaching philosophy. It gained followers. People shared their own stories about teachers who changed their lives. In February, a documentary filmmaker reached out. She wanted to make a short film about the scholarship and the impact teachers have on underserved communities. I said yes. The film premiered at a regional film festival in April. It won the Audience Choice Award. By May, I'd been invited to speak at education conferences, to write op-eds about teacher recruitment and retention, to consult with other organizations starting similar scholarship programs. I'd become, accidentally, a minor public figure in education advocacy circles. And my family? They became spectators to a life they'd tried to diminish. The second annual scholarship ceremony was even larger than the first. This time, we had 4 recipients. This time, the story was covered by state news outlets. This time, a congressman attended and praised the program as a model for addressing the teacher shortage crisis. I was standing at the reception afterward, talking with one of the scholarship recipients when I saw her. My mother, alone this time, standing at the edge of the crowd, watching me. I excused myself and walked over. "Hello, Mother." Evelyn. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. "That was a lovely ceremony." "Thank you. I wanted to tell you." She paused, and for the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in her face. "What you've built here is remarkable." "It is," I agreed. "David would be proud." "I'm sure he would." Another pause. "Your father and we've been talking about how things ended between us." I waited. "We may have been hasty in our judgment of your choices." "May have been?" She flinched. "We were wrong about the inheritance, about the way we handled things, about you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not a monster but a woman who'd spent her whole life performing, curating, controlling. A woman who'd valued appearance over authenticity for so long that she'd lost sight of what actually mattered. I felt a wave of something that wasn't quite forgiveness, but also wasn't anger anymore. "I appreciate you saying that," I said quietly, "but it doesn't change anything." "Evelyn, you taught me that love was conditional, that acceptance came with requirements, that I had to be a certain kind of person to deserve your approval." I kept my voice steady. "And you know what? You were wrong. David's family taught me the opposite. They taught me that love means supporting someone's authentic path even when you don't understand it. That generosity isn't about maximizing your own benefit. That real wealth is measured in relationships and integrity, not bank accounts." She was crying now, silently, tears tracking through her carefully applied makeup. "I forgive you," I continued. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You uninvited me from the family reunion because I was an embarrassment. Now I'm uninviting you from my life, not out of spite, but because I finally understand my worth." "Please," she whispered, "you're my daughter." "I am," I agreed. "I'll always be your daughter. But I'm also my own person. And I choose to surround myself with people who celebrate that instead of trying to change it." I walked away then, back to the celebration, back to the students and teachers and donors who understood what we were building together. I didn't look back. The Martha's Vineyard reunion happened in August, as it always did. I saw photos on social media, my family gathered on the beach, drinks in hand, smiling for the camera. The photos looked exactly like every other year, except I wasn't in them, and I didn't miss being there. Instead, I spent that week in Oregon with Tom, Linda, and Amy. We visited the land that David's uncle had left them, the land that was now a thriving timber project, sustainably managed, providing jobs and protecting old-growth forest. We hiked through those woods, and I felt David there with me. The third year of the scholarship program, we expanded nationally. Other schools wanted to replicate the model. We created a foundation with proper infrastructure. I took a sabbatical from teaching to run it full-time. Maria Ortiz, our first recipient, was now student teaching. She sent me a photo of her first classroom, tears in her eyes, caption reading, "I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it." James Chen started a YouTube channel about making history engaging for students. It had 50,000 subscribers. The ripple spread further than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes I still think about my family. I hear updates through mutual acquaintances. Marcus is still at the firm. My father is talking about retirement. My mother is still on her charity boards, still attending galas, still living the life she's always lived. I don't hate them, but I don't miss them either. Because here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about refusing to let cruelty define you. It's about taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and transforming it into something beautiful. It's about proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were right all along about what matters. My name is Evelyn, and I am the widow of a high school English teacher who believed in the power of education to change lives. I am the daughter of people who valued appearances over authenticity. I am the founder of a scholarship program that has helped dozens of future teachers pursue their calling. And I am, finally, exactly who I was always meant to be. The best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. It's building a life so full of purpose and meaning that their opinions become irrelevant. It's choosing grace over bitterness, generosity over pettiness, and substance over status. It's understanding that the people who can't see your worth are revealing their own limitations, not yours. When they sent that letter telling me not to come to the reunion, they thought they were pushing me out. But what they actually did was set me free. And freedom, it turns out, is the greatest revenge of all.